Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, and viewers and friends of Ikra TV. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm your host Iqbal Bana. As I keep saying every week, we try and come into your homes every week to try and bring issues that have affected all of us at some stage in our lives. A, to provide information about what is going on in our communities. B, to make you aware of some of the challenges that the communities are facing. And C, to try and inspire people into looking at issues on a different level so that we can address some of those factors that are of concern to many, many viewers that come watch Ikra TV and watch this program in particular. We've always done what we hope is something that you find interesting and something that helps you and your families moving forward. Today, I want to talk about something that has affected all of us. Every family, not just in this land, but throughout the world, has been affected by COVID. Now, we've heard a lot of things about COVID. I've done several programs about COVID and vaccination and how communities need to respond, what Islam says about how wanting to respond to the legislation that was put forward by us, and we had Maulanas and we had doctors, medical experts, etc., come and share all sorts of ideas and thoughts with us. And I'm sure many people have told me that that helped. But one area that has not really been discussed over the last 18 months or so is the impact of COVID on young people. And it seems like that whole group of people somehow were missed out. How did COVID impact them? What happened to young people when COVID hit? Here you had young, bright, the whole future in front of them, suddenly placed in lockdown, which probably had a negative impact, not probably, it did have a negative impact on a lot of them. So, one of the projects that has been sort of developed in Bradford by the Kismet Centre, and particularly one of my guests today, whom you've seen before, she's no stranger to Real Talk in my programs. Many of you will know her quite well. You have seen her all over the country because she's an international star and talks on a lot of issues. She's done some phenomenal work on Muslim women and prisons over the last 3-4 years. She's produced some amazing reports and recommendations for the prison service as to how the prison service needs to respond and react to the issues that Muslim women face when they receive custodial sentences. And we have spoken about that before, and I'm sure we'll be speaking about that again because I believe she's coming up with a second report on this particular issue in a very short time. So can I just introduce first of all my guest. The first one is Sophie Bunsey, and I'm sure you will remember her from before. And Sophie, I'm not sure whether she has been here after her appointment as a Deputy Lieutenant for the County of West Yorkshire. If she hasn't, Sophie, many congratulations. The appointment by the Queen to become a Deputy Lieutenant for the County of West Yorkshire. The second, I think, the third Muslim woman in West Yorkshire to be appointed to this position. And it's really pleased to have you on the team. As my viewers will know, I'm also a Deputy Lieutenant and have been so for quite a while. So it's welcome to have you here. And my other two guests are a young man called Ali and a young sister called Miriam. They're both featured in this film that Sophie was instrumental in producing, which is looking at the young in COVID and how the pandemic affected them. Now there's a short film and there's a short trailer that explains what this film is all about. And we're going to show that to you first because it is quite hard-hitting. I mean, I didn't realize this, but some young people are affected in such a way that they actually took their own lives. The mental impact that they had on them was so devastating that they actually felt that they had nothing left to live for, and unfortunately they took their own lives. Just imagine the trauma their parents and their brothers and sisters and others would have gone through. And why was it that we allowed that to happen? Why is it that there were no support mechanisms and services out there that will look after the young people who are facing these things? Now, Ali, obviously, he'll be talking about his story. Miriam, who had become the victim of COVID, ended up in hospital, was about to put in a coma on a ventilator, but Allah, by grace of Allah, she came out with, mashallah. Now, obviously, these are sensitive issues, and I'm sure Sophie will be able to help us navigate through that. But as I say every week, this is a program that is for you. If you as a family or know friends who've been affected and want to come and share your thoughts and ideas about why institutional organizations were not responding, why they were not capable of providing the services, that should have been provided. Please feel free to ring in 01274 214 299. We'd love to hear your story. Can we first look at this very short film, which is about young and in COVID, which has been made, as I say, by the Kismet Center. The producer, director, everything is Sophie. So let's see the film first, and then I'll talk to Sophie. We'll explain the purpose behind it.
Never could have been thinking I would know what the future bring. All the highs and lows. Said I'm gonna win, though the world might spin.
This was a time for young people to strengthen and build on friendships and relationships, but also realise who they were.
Because people think because we're younger we can deal with these kind of things better. It don't mean it doesn't take a toll on us.
Knowing in your mind, you're like, you want to social, you want to meet up with your friends, but it's like, I can't risk that for my family and them.
Other people will find it easier to work from home, but for me it's harder. Like, I really need that push as well. And sometimes my parents can't give me that, so coming to school helps especially. A lot of people didn't have ways to like cope with staying indoors.
Mental health in the Asian community, there's a big stigma around it, so it's been very hard to even talk about mental health.
The suicide rates are going up because I've lost 3 of my friends and I've lost an auntie to suicide.
Not being able to breathe, it doesn't seem like something that can actually happen. At this point, they'd put the ventilator on me. A doctor from the ICU came to see me and she told me that they're going to put me in a coma for about 8 weeks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. I'm sure watching that short clip of a very long program which has been aired by both the BBC and Channel 4, who picked up this story and thought it was so important they actually aired it on a national TV program channel. So let's talk to the person behind it, and that is Sophie Bansi. Sophie, as I say, most of my viewers will know her. Sophie, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can I just say, I have a bit of a cold today, so please forgive me with my voice if it goes. I'm trying to drink some hot sort of lemon juice here to try and keep my throat lubricated. So please forgive me. Sophie, welcome. Thank you for coming back again.
Thank you.
And as I say, welcome in your capacity as DL as well. What so motivated you to do this film? Obviously very powerful, very touching, very emotional, but why, what motivated you to do this film?
I think there was a number of reasons, Iqbal Bhai. So Bradford, as you know, is described as one of the youngest cities in the UK, and it's called that because it has a very sizable young population. So that made sense that young people that are in the city would have some sort of experience or journey that perhaps we weren't catching. And also, as you know, in March, I was one of the few practitioners alongside some of the team members in Kidmat Centre that actually came out to work. So we were setting up food banks, we were setting up campaigns on various things, nitrous oxide, other things, community-based services on phone lines. And one of the things I really noted at the time was actually young people that were congregating in and around the centre because they weren't going to school and they weren't working and not able to socialise, but out of boredom they would be there. And through conversations with them, just getting the feeling that many of them said that they didn't feel they were a priority in the government conversations or any other conversations.
Right.
They'd been passed off as very resilient, physically resilient, emotionally,
They were emotionally, mentally, physically tough.
Yeah, they can weather it,
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
fine, they're young people, they'll get over it. However, you could really see that some of them were struggling and relapsing. And as you know, my own background, my first career and first chapter was in youth work. You know, I'm a qualified youth worker. It was something I managed a youth project for many, many years. So having had that practice in the back of my mind and speaking with some of our young people around what we could do, you know, we quickly moved. We decided to set online support provision. So we could all meet as a youth group online, have conversations, have inspirational
So we're doing this
speakers.
via Zoom and Teams and things like that?
The safest way via Zoom, and keeping them occupied and keeping them busy because, you know, you might think home's the safest place, and for some people, they were really struggling in their homes, 24/7 in the house with the same people, issues getting on top of them, you know, frustration, just feeling like, you know, this was supposed to be the highlight years of their life. Whether that was their GCSEs, whether that was their prom, whether that was getting a new job. And many of them were just saying, we've just lost that and everything's come to a standstill. And sometimes home can be a very difficult place to be. But it just felt, you know, nobody was having that conversation with them and nobody felt like they needed that conversation. So having my own background and then realising what was going on, I just felt so we had to take that impetus and really document what was going on. So through conversations with one young girl, she said, we have to do something, what can we do outside of these support sessions? And then I decided to just sort of take the risk with another colleague of mine that is a filmmaker and say, we need to go around the young people that we do know and avail some of the networks that we do have to capture stories.
And hearing these stories,
yeah,
obviously, how did that affect you? Because I mean, some of the stories we're hearing, and I'm sure we'll hear from Miriam and Ali as well, are quite challenging and traumatic, aren't they?
Of course.
I mean, people taking their own lives. You know, I mean, Ali was saying before we came on air that, you know, some of his friends, one or two of his friends actually, and Miriam as well. So, I mean, you know, here, having first-hand sort of being accountable for all this, how did it affect you as well as a Muslim young woman, youth worker from the past?
I think I'd like to think that I'm a bit of a tough cookie. You know,
well,
I've worked in prisons for many years.
I definitely know you're a tough cookie, but I mean, obviously,
but
these are emotional things,
yeah,
aren't
and
they?
this was a very different kind of tough. You know, you have to bear in mind, Iqbal, Bhai, that we were also walking out into that smog. I call it a smog because the safest place to stay was at home, and many providers shut shop and they stayed at home where it was safe. So I think there were some real conversations around risk that I had with myself as well about how halfway through a pandemic are we going to go out and start capturing footage with people? How do we keep them safe? How do we keep ourselves safe? And for me, part of that keeping myself safe meant that I couldn't see some of my family. I couldn't see my mother, who's older. I couldn't see some of my siblings or the young nieces and nephews because I just didn't know what I would have. So I think that emotional resilience came about because any good community development worker is told to, you know, do the right thing, be responsive. When there is a need, document that need or document a response. So I think it really depends on how you're trained, and alhamdulillah, I've had some very good mentors.
May Allah give you strength, more strength to do the work. I mean, obviously, you've hit a very important issue here. Young people cooped up in the house 24/7, not able to go out because the government says you can't go out. And that can be challenging for husband and wives being together, or brothers and sisters. And obviously, this must be, particularly if you're living as part of a wider family network, where you have, you know, parents and grandparents and other brothers and sisters, it must have been even more challenging. So, I mean, obviously, turning to Ali. Ali, you know, you look a very young, fit guy. How did the pandemic sort of touch you? How did it hit you? Because you look as, you know, you're a bodybuilder or a sports athlete or something like that.
I am really sporty. I do enjoy my sports. I'm actually an amateur boxer, where I box on amateur level. And I used to go every day after college. I used to go to boxing. Boxing was my life. Eat, sleep, boxing, repeat. That's all I did, and I loved boxing. And then boxing.
Right.
And then boom.
It all came to an end.
All came to an end. No boxing. And that's when I realized that boxing was what gave me my confidence. Boxing was what gave me the ability to be me. It what made me self-aware of who I was. And it made me feel like a better person. I mean, when exercising, you're already releasing positive endorphins, which make you happier. And then it was boxing that was doing that for me. And when I had no boxing, I thought, what am I going to do? That's when I realized that I couldn't cope. And then being stuck at home, it didn't help that at all. And when everything was shut, especially boxing, I had nothing.
So your life came to a standstill?
Yes, it came to a pause.
Yeah. And you were cooped up in the house with your family and etc. And how did that make you feel? I mean, you know, having to be 24/7 in a closed environment.
Yeah, it was hard, is because I think Mum's sick of me now. You know, I think she's had enough. But you know, our family, it's a big family, so it was hard seeing everyone every day. I mean, we did get used to it, but it is frustrating because we're always in each other's way. And we're always there, cooped up. There's no personal space. There's not much privacy.
I hope you learned to make rotis for your mum while you were there.
We tried baking brownies once, but it didn't end well. No.
Oh, sure. All right. So obviously, it affected you emotionally, mentally, physically as well.
Yeah.
Because did that affect your physical well-being?
When my mental health was, if you're not mentally stable, you're not physically stable.
Right.
That's for sure. Because if you're not mentally fit, then you're not physically fit. Because if I'm not mentally telling myself, I need exercise, I need go, I need do boxing, my physical well-being is just going to be me sat at home, doing nothing, eating. I mean, eating is also a comfort way of comforting yourself. So if I'm not doing anything physical...
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm just going to be eating and just comforting myself in other ways, so I will have boxing there for me. So it does affect my mental, physical health.
So how did you keep yourself going in these very difficult, challenging times, as you say, not able to do your physical activity, having to live in a home with other brothers and sisters and family or whatever, whoever they are, like you say, constantly bumping into each other, getting into each other's ways. How did you sort of prepare yourself to be able to live in that environment? Or did it affect you in such a way that you became an introvert, you closed yourself inside?
At first I did. I closed myself inside. I think the safest way I could say this is that my life became my bedroom.
Right.
Literally, even college, I'd wake up, I'd stay in my room. College was online. It was the worst experience of college I could ever have had, sitting in front of a laptop and just listening to lecturers and teachers teach you how to teach. And it wasn't the best experience. I started off staying at home, staying enclosed, staying to myself, and then slowly I thought, do you know what, I need to do something about it. So then I joined up with Mary Magdalene, a grassroots youth organisation, where we started a cycling program, where we used bike riding as a tool to help us deal with mental health issues. I mean, cycling is amazing. It's a great coping strategy. It's fun. It's therapeutic. There's so much open scenery out there when you ride your bike and the wind's blowing on your face. Altogether, it's just amazing. And I think that's what helped me get out there. So slowly I started cycling, and then I started running. But running, it wasn't the same as boxing, so I didn't have that same love, that same comfort that boxing gave me.
Right. Okay, so obviously you found a way to try and cope with this emotional, mental stress that you were under. Now, Miriam, obviously you became a victim of COVID yourself. You contracted COVID, and that affected you in a way. You were hospitalized, and you were saying at one stage they were thinking of putting you in a coma.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been absolutely traumatic for you.
Yeah, it was the scariest time of my life.
Right.
Being young, I didn't think I'd get COVID. I stuck to all the government rules. I stayed at home, and it was Allah's plan. So I did end up having COVID. I ended up hospitalised. I'm being told I'm going to get put into a coma. I don't know if I'm going to survive.
My goodness.
At 18 years old, you'd never think that you're going to be hearing that you might not live long. So all I could think about was my parents at the time, and I wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to see nobody. You had to go to the hospital by yourself. It was my first time being in the hospital, for myself, and being in an ambulance. I didn't want to go. I said no at first, but my dad and my mum, they was like, look, but you need to get yourself checked out. So in my head, I was going to get myself checked out. Next thing, I've got COVID. I had like pneumonia around the lungs, and I couldn't breathe. So I was on a ventilator, and as they were about to take me to the ICU to put me in a coma, one of the doctors looked back and said, maybe we'll try just the ventilator on its own. And I worked, and a long week later, I was
I mean, how, obviously, you went in the height of the pandemic, you're saying.
Gee.
Nobody else was allowed to come with you.
No.
Did you know how your parents were coping with it at that time? It must have been nightmarish for them as well.
It was because my family ended up having it as well. So my granddad was in the hospital at the same time as me. He was in the ward next to mine. My mum ended up in the hospital, but she had it, alhamdulillah, minor, so she was allowed to leave.
Right. So all this at the same time?
All this in the same 2 days.
Right.
So it was a really difficult time for everyone, but they were trying their best to comfort me, to make me feel, okay. They were, we have technology, which I'm so grateful for, because if we didn't, I don't know how I would have coped not being on FaceTime to my family. At all hours, at all hours they was on call to me, because I couldn't be alone in a room. Just it is really scary, yeah. Especially when you can't breathe. I became, I didn't have no independence at all. Right.
And how do you find the medical staff during this experience?
They was really well. I'm not a tough patient, so I'd never called anyone unless I needed them.
Right.
But
then you must be tough. If you don't call anyone unless you really need them, that means you must be tough.
Yeah. Them coming to give me breakfast and feed me as well. Not being able to feed yourself, go to the toilet, things like that. I couldn't do nothing. It was really hard.
So you were in their hands, basically.
I was, yes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, this must be really challenging for you. I mean, you must have had thoughts, am I going to go home or not?
Yeah, as soon as they told me I'm going to a coma, I thought, that's it, I'm going to die now. This is the end of my time. So I don't care if I die, don't put me in a coma, let me see my mum and dad. And I was just crying, but they said, look, we can't let you do that. You just have to do this. This is how you're going to get better.
I mean, that is really, really challenging for anyone.
Yeah.
you know, to be told that, you know, you're going to go into a coma because you don't know whether you're going to come out of it or not. And I know lots of people who have been induced who never came out, and you know, it's something that I'm sure you would have probably
I've
heard
seen
of
a
it.
family member in the past be in a coma as well, so, and I spoke to them about their experiences. This was a couple of years back, but I remember how awful it was for them, and I just thought, I just didn't know what, you don't know what to think at the time.
Right.
All I could think of was being with my family.
Right, I see. Now with Sophie, I mean, these very tragic, traumatic stories, and you captured them, I know, you know, in a very succinct, professional way. Now, you know, we'll be going to a break very soon, but very quickly, how has the rest of the world, you know, the BBC and the audience and Channel 4, how have they sort of viewed this program?
I think for us this was a very long time in the making, 9 months. We documented things very carefully. As you said, we did it succinctly. We didn't sensationalise anything. We wanted honesty and truth and young people to feel like they could get their side across. But the response has just been phenomenal. Like I said, nationally from the BBC, from Channel 4, who've actually come down to Bradford and then refilmed with the young people. So it just shows.
So they've done a follow-up program.
They've done follow-ups and questions and interviews with these young people. These are, you know, 2 of the 8 young people that we had. So it's just shown how much this story of young people and their hidden journeys and plight has resonated nationally, really.
Because yeah, I'm sure there'll be many, many young people throughout the country who would have gone through very similar experiences, I'm sure, and they will probably also feel, you know, that they had no support in their own local areas. I hope you found the first part of this program of some interest, because as I say, listening to these young people and listening to what Sophie's been doing, it is absolutely traumatic to hear how young people have faced this pandemic. Inshallah, we're going for a short break. Inshallah, we'll be back very soon. In the meantime, as I keep saying, go for a tea, coffee, faluda, whatever it is. And inshallah, we'll join you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.